there said, my name's David Herrera. I'll go through my intro here in a bit, but just some things about this presentation. If you guys do have questions, there will be a question and answer part of it at the end, and Jamie's gonna, take care of the online questions. So you can send those questions to Zoom or the Zoom chat or Slack, QA at the point, and we'll get them screened for you. All right. So about me, my name's David Herrera. I've been doing QA for a little bit more than a decade, and I'll go over that in a bit. I'm from Guatemala originally, and immigrated here around the time I was 12. I landed here on Utah, and it's been home ever since. So, go Jazz. As for my professional history here, in another life, I was a sales manager for DirecTV, and I would teach people how to sell. That's kind of how I got my start training and mentoring, and I loved it. I love teaching people new things. I love teaching people to have confidence in their own work, right, one way or another. I then transitioned to tech, thanks to Carlos, and I went to school for it, things like that. And currently, I'm an automation lead at MX, which is a local company here in Lehigh, and I'll give you the elevator pitch as to what MX does. It's basically in the finance world, right? So we do just some of the things we do: data enhancement, data aggregation, and data connectivity. All big words to say that we are trying to make the banking experience better for normal people. There's also a budgeting tool that you get with MX, but more than anything, it's just trying to make sense of all your transactions that come through your bank. Simple as that. And now I'm also helping out QA at the point with Jamie. We'll actually be taking over the meetup section of QA at the point, so we'll help bring in some people to talk with you and then present. So I wanted to mention that just in case that you have ever thought of presenting, it doesn't have to be a big, huge subject. It could be just something you're passionate about, right? And as long as you love it and people want to know about it, people will listen. And so that's the exciting part about it. So if you are thinking about presenting or just curious about it, let me or Jamie know, and we'll help you. Even Carlos, he'll direct you to us, and we'll help you get on board. It's fun. All right. So the agenda for today kind of goes as follows. At first, I'm going to talk about the challenge here today, presenting about how to start up an automation group from scratch, right? It's a big ask. It's a big task. So we'll go over that. I'll introduce to you MX's value of founder's mindset. It's actually a value that they teach all of their employees. But one thing I love about it is it really applies to each of us in our own work, and you'll see why in a minute. And then I'll go through what actually takes building an automation team from scratch. I'll share with you the strategies that I've used, tools, resources, and how manual testers get involved with that. Because to me, manual testers are automation's best friend, really, because they really know the product in and out, and they kind of help throughout the whole process. So, and then I'll share with you some pitfalls and risks along with building an automation team, and then some lessons that I have learned over the time that I've been building an automation team. All right, so let's talk about the challenge here. So I wanted to talk to you guys about a topic that's been asked for over and over again at QA at the Point, which is building an automation team. But the challenge here today is uh, I have to make it holistic enough for you guys to understand what it takes, but approachable enough that really you feel like at the end of this meeting, you could do it yourself if you've been asked. I know that in the past, there's been people at QA at the Point that that's literally the question. They just asked me to start up an automation team. How do I do it? Right. And sometimes, you feel fresh yourself, you feel green in your own job, and then they still ask that of you, right? So I'll help you along with that. I also want to give you some actionable items, items that you can take to you with you, sorry, and apply them where you work if you've ever been asked to build an automation team by yourself. And then I put specifically broad here because that's part of the challenge, right? Every team is different. Every company has a little different structure, different processes. Um, so how do I tell you how to do something if every job's a little bit different, right? So I wanted you guys to understand the challenge because you may agree with a lot of this, you may disagree with some of it, and that's fine. The whole point is to start a discourse, right? So if you have questions, throw them in. If you have your own experiences, throw them in. People love to learn about that, and we can only learn if we share each other's knowledge, right? And that's the whole point of Q at the Point. All right. So on to the founder's mindset, and this is actually a value at MX. So I'll read it all together, and then I'll go and kind of dissect it here. So it says, when encountering any problem across MX, we ask ourselves, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? We care deeply about the company, its trajectory. One second, I need to take out the video there. We care deeply about the company, its trajectory, velocity, to the point we cannot stay silent if we see an area where we can do better. We are willing to vigorously and passionately debate options so that we can quickly come up with an optimal solution. We are gritty, relentless leaders, regardless of title, who are introspective and self-analytical. In the face of complex, long-term problems, we are capable of composing world-changing solutions by reducing problems to fundamental, bite-sized, iterative pieces. We deliver quality work and build for the long term. That's a lot of words, but that's why I'm going to try and dissect it for you. And please, take what you want from this quote. It's actually a public quote. I gave the source there, so you guys can go back and look at it again. So the first quote there in white, it says, "If not me, then who? If not now, then when?" I really, when I read this value and when I was thinking of coming over to MX and work for them, that really stood out for me because that's kind of been my nagging problem at some companies that I've worked for, right? We just kind of wait for someone else to fix it, or we just kind of see the problem, but not, we know that there's just a lot of bureaucracy and it's probably not going to get done, right? But taking this into heart, if not me, then who? You can really empower yourself to start problem solving, to start showing someone maybe a demo, a proof of concept, share some media, share some YouTube clip that might help improve your place of employment, right? And that's really what it's about. Starting a team is about starting with one person that wants to start doing something, and then people who also want to do something joining together, right? So the next part I want to dissect here is we're willing to vigorously and passionately debate options so that we can quickly come up with an optimal solution. I think all of us have had experiences where we have been so passionate about a problem or a bug or a feature that it just kind of nags at you, and you don't want to release it. You don't want to put your name. You don't want to say Jamie. I know it's this way. You don't want to say pass until it meets your standard, meets your seal of approval, right? And that's great. I love that passion. I really do. I see that passion every day in people in tech. But what I want to point out to is we can quickly come to an optimal solution. Sometimes we kind of get bogged down in the problem or the passion, right? It should be this way. It should be this way. It should be this way. When in reality, we're kind of stopping the group as a whole in coming up to a conclusion or a solution, right? So yes, we can have passion. Yes, we can bring up debates, but for a purpose, I think. And that's another great quality of building a team of your own, is you understand that there will be debates, but you do it with a reason. You do it with a purpose, and you ultimately want to get this done, right, together. And sometimes there will be some give. Sometimes there will be, you won't get your way. That happens. But at the same time, sometimes you will. All right. So the last thing, or a couple more things I want to point out here is we are gritty, relentless leaders, regardless of title, who are introspective and self-analytical. I really love that because they had the idea to include regardless of title, right? Sometimes I know that when I started in tech, I felt so little next to all these great people in tech, right? I had my doubts and my imposter syndrome, and it happens, right? But regardless of title, we can make a change. Regardless of title, we can go forth and at least speak our voice. Maybe someone didn't notice that there was a bug that you had noticed, right? Maybe someone didn't notice that maybe there was a flaw in the framework that we're building, right? Security flaws, accessibility, things like that. Someone needs to say the first word, right? Regardless of title. And I love that. I love that. And then the last couple of things I want to dissect from this is reducing problems to fundamental bite-sized iterative pieces, right? We deliver quality work and build for the long term. And that's really, if you think about it, any big problem in this world is done that way, right? There's a saying that I just remember, how do you eat an elephant, right? And the punchline is one bite at a time. Because you can't eat the whole elephant all at once. You got to go one bite at a time, right? And in building a team, especially an automation team, it has to be clear to not only the team that you're building, but the people that you're reporting to, that it will not happen overnight, right? It is a process. It is in stages. And yes, we know where we want to go, right? And sometimes we don't have automation. Well, yeah, we'll get there, right? It's just one bite at a time, iterative pieces, things that then the company can then use over and over again, right? Especially if you kind of document everything along the way. Yeah, so that's the founder's mindset. I really believe in it. It's probably something that you'll see over again in different words, but I really like it because it empowers you to take action. It empowers you to, even regardless of your insecurities, they asked you that for a reason. They asked you to build that team for a reason, right? So let's do it. All right, so let's move on to the strategy that I've used for this. Now, this strategy is oversimplified. It's a top-level strategy, right? There's definitely more to that. But again, I can't be as specific to everyone's company, right? So take this as a framework and then kind of drill down to it, to your needs, to your culture, right? So I start at the very top, a gap analysis. And gap analysis, I actually picked up, I was trying to get like a Webster's dictionary defines, but um, I actually like the um, definition that Lucid team came up with, their content team. What is a gap analysis? A gap analysis is a process that allows organizations to determine how to best achieve their business goals. It compares the current state with the ideal state or goals, which highlights the shortcomings and opportunities for improvement. Okay? So if you only remember one thing about gap analysis, let it be this. The gap analysis, what do we have now versus what do we wish for, right? The goals. From there, you can actually start building to-do lists for building a team, or really any problem if you think about it. A test plan, a test case, you can use this to build your tasks, your first to-do list. And it could be in a document, it could be in your head, it could be on Trello, whatever tool you need to help you along with this, it needs to be something that you can share with your new team or the team that you'll be creating. From there, you move on to the tools and resources, right? And I'll talk more about this in a different slide, but what tools do you have available to complete this task? And again, we're building an automation team, right? So do we have a framework that we can use? Do we need to start from scratch? Do we know anyone who knows how to automate? Do we have anyone that's willing to, right? And tools can also be actual, do we have the right equipment for it? Do we have the right code? Do we have the right, source control, things like that. From there, you can move on to training and documentation, right? And this is probably where you will spend a lot of your time building a team of automation, training and documentation. This wheel, I tried to make a wheel. I'm not Jamie with her PowerPoint skills, but this wheel is supposed to be a cycle, right? You repeat this process over and over again. And the whole point of a documentation is that you create a baseline for your team, for your company. Who are you? What are you trying to accomplish? Who's involved? What are some of the risk factors involved? And so on and so forth. Links to be useful. What structure do we need to have? What framework are we using? What code language are we using? Things like that. And then you train along the way. At MX, just to give you a little insight on how I'm doing this, is I'm actually training willing manual QA testers to automate. And some of them know zero coding skills. And I love it because as long as they have that passion that I talked about before, that's all I really care about. I can teach you the rest, right? We have a team that we're building on purpose, with a purpose. And if you're willing and you're taking the time, and a lot of these people that I'm training actually do it like, as they're waiting for, a release or something like that, where they have time. And then we give them time also in the company to come and learn. And they're so passionate. I think those manual testers that know zero code are probably the most passionate programmers I've ever met in my tenure there, because they really want to show that they're putting effort in there, that they're showing. And I've actually had 2 in this first quarter produce their first commits that we can actually start testing. So that's really what we're looking for. And again, every company is going to be a little different, right? Maybe they don't want you to use manual testers. Maybe they want you to go out and hire someone. Maybe they want overseas, right? It's going to be a different situation. But in either case, you're going to need to train them to the confines of what you're defining for your team, right? And document. Documenting is something I will always believe in because there's always a source of truth, right? And it should be a living document. It will always grow. It will always change, right? From there, we go to feedback and check-ins, right? This is something that in other companies you may call a retrospective, you may call like a report of how we're doing, things like that. But uh, this is probably the biggest builder for a team is once you have your feedback. I have a great opportunity at MX to have 3 different levels of feedback. So I talk to my director almost every 2 weeks about what we're doing, what we're working on, how the team is being built, what are we going over, is there anyone else that can do code reviews, because if it's just one person doing code reviews, it's going to be a lot, right? So I'm actually teaching these first time coders to do their code reviews to help me out with them. I invite them to those, and I challenge them to kind of see where the problem is. Um, so, like I said, I've been lucky enough that I have 3 different levels of feedback. Uh, I talk to my director almost every 2 weeks about it. I check in with my team because I do have a small team of automation. And then I check in with the mentors, the mentees that I'm teaching, right? The new people that are trying to learn how to code. They're doing manual, but they're trying to get into automation, right? And based on those feedbacks, then I can adjust how I train. Based on those feedbacks, I can adjust how I document. Based on those feedbacks, I can adjust the tools and resources that I need. So it kind of all connects together, right? After that feedback is done, boom, we're right back to that gap analysis, right? And it's a cycle, right? So each time you run that cycle, you're going to have less or more in that gap analysis, right? Maybe you fixed something here, but something else needs fixing right here, right? And I think this is the take out of building a team is it's done with a purpose, but have fun with it, right? Because at the end of the day, you're dealing with real people. You're dealing with real people who want to do good, who want to move the bar, who want to really up their skill, right? So it should be a fun process for anyone involved. Um, cool. All right. So this is a lot. I didn't have too much time to like do special effects. So if you can, try and stop yourself from reading ahead. I'll help you go through those. If you can't, I understand. Some people are like that. So building an automation team takes a lot of tools and resources, right? Um, Part of that process in that cycle, again, if you can remember that cycle, is tool discovery, right? So some of the questions that you need to ask is what's currently available, right? When I started with MX, they really love Ruby, and I came with Python skills. Lucky for me, I was able to kind of convince them one way or another between Ruby and Python, right? But that was done with a demo. I actually built a demo of a testing framework, both with Ruby and then with Python, and compared apples to oranges, really. Um, and based on that, we were able to make a consensus of what tools we wanted to use. And with giving that freedom of like, okay, if you really want to do Ruby, go ahead, we'll let you do that. The other question is, what are the immediate needs? And some of these are going to be really low hanging, right? Well, we need a framework. We need a test that's automated, right? And some of them are going to be a little bit more out there, right? Like, well, we need pipelines to be running on us. Okay, well, we're getting too far ahead. Let's walk the first step first. And then the other question that I like to include in here, and these could all be included in the gap analysis that I was talking about. What's in your wish list? All right, you uh, forward think to the future where you can go, okay, if I have a team that's complete, if I have a team that's running shipshape, this is kind of what I would want, and this is kind of where I want the automation team to go to. If you don't know, right? Because like I said at the beginning, some people are given this task from their first week of starting a manual QA job, right? If you don't know, then let's use the resources available to you. QA at the point, for example. You have mentors there that are willing to share in it. There's probably real good subject matter experts within your own company that really know how to build a team, and they can help you with that, right? I'm a believer of everyone should have at least two mentors. You know. All right. So besides the tool discovery, there's also people resources, humans. All right. With my sales team knowledge, I came to realize that everyone has a different learning style. Period. Right. It could be visual, it could be auditory, it could be tactile, right? But as a leader, as someone building that automation team, it is vital for you to know what kind of learning style you have within that team that you're building. Because, Susie Q here, she may be really good at doing it herself. She just needs a little direction, right? Max here just wants to listen to me talk, and he absorbs that. And then someone else may have a mix of that, right? So understanding that those learning styles exist, and not only that, but if you can't read a person and understand their learning style, I have literally asked people, what's the best way you learn? Tell me, right? Because I want to start off on the right foot. From there, you have your team and individual strengths, right? Like I said, at MX, I start with a small team. There's actually two of us right now that know how to automate. Based on that, I have weekly sessions with my team member to see how they're doing, first of all, but also to evaluate some of their strengths, right? And some of the requirements that they need to maybe learn. For our team, it could be pipelines, for example, right? So that's something that I can start planning when thinking ahead. And then individual strengths, right? I think maybe I should have put strengths and passions because their individuals are passionate about one topic or a couple topics, right? It could be accessibility. It could be Ruby. It could be Python. It could be Pylenium, if you guys have heard of that. Things like that. And you can use those strengths and passions to then make a plan for that individual and that team, all right? And kind of level it out if needed. Any applicable knowledge, past or present, that team or individual has, right? What have you built before? What do you have knowledge of? Oh, you can do a framework? Great. Show me a demo. Show me a demo so I can see how you do it, right? Show me what you can do. And people love showing off their skills. Yeah, that's one thing that I love asking that, because they will create a demo right away. I had a guy, I asked that yesterday, and before the day end, he had a demo for me, right? And it's just that passion. It's just that passion. And then individual goals. I think this one is one that I probably will harp on a lot, because you can't make someone do something that they don't want to do, right? I think that has been some of the drawbacks in a lot of companies that I've worked for, is you put someone in a position that they weren't ready for or didn't even want, and you'll probably see a 2 weeks notice coming up the pipeline soon. So getting to know that individual person, getting to know their goals, both career path and learning paths. What do you want to learn about? What do you wish you had in your arsenal, in your tool belt, right? Um, what about your career? I know that some automation team really only want to hire people who only want to do automation, period. And some people, they're okay hiring people who want to use automation as a jumping board to something else. I don't see the bad in one of those yeah, paths, right? But most definitely, I think if they can help move the needle and they can give me some of their time that it makes it valuable to hire them, then I'm willing to hire someone who just wants to use it as a stepping stone to something else, right? That's totally fine. It happens. We change as humans. Our goals change, our family dynamic changes, things like that. So why not our career path, right? Um, and then going down to finally the language and the framework. I put this first bullet point here, the number one question, because anytime I talk to someone about building a team or building a new framework, um, I get asked this question pretty much 9 times out of 10. What's the best language? Tell me what I should pick, and I'll start from there, right? And well, yeah, and they probably want it on the way to lunch. So you have 10, 20 minutes to convince them one way or another. And that's a tough question to answer in the first place. But the way that I answer that is simply, well, what does your team use? Who can help you build this? Because it will really matter in the long run. If you have a question and your team can't help you, then you're kind of up a creek with no paddle. Did I use that right? Yeah. All right. Cool. Right. I think the best language to learn really is the one that people can help you with the most, right? And that's sometimes immediately your team. Um, but besides that, I would add that it's a team-centric decision. Sure, they asked you to build a team of automation. But again, if we go back a few bullet points, what's their strengths? What's their passions, right? Because they might come in with something that you hadn't thought of, and that's okay, right? And then it's goal-centric, right? What does the business require, right? Because if we take time to build a whole framework in, let's say, um, let's see, uh, WebDriver IO, right? And there's limitations to that, then we have to go back to step one, right? So really taking the business goals and the team goals together and understanding where you can get the most help immediately will help you pick a language. Now, the short answer is I like Python. um, all right. So let's talk about manual testers. When I started in manual QA, um, I loved it. I think it was a great way to start my tech career because it really helped me understand the systems. It really helped me understand logic and how different websites and apps, web apps, APIs, backend, all of that was built, right? That first bullet point where it says non-technical versus subject matter expert, I put that there because there's a story to that most of us have ran into if you've been in QA long enough. Is I was sitting in one of my companies that I worked for before, and I was sitting there in a grooming session, right? And they waited for me, which is awesome. I was a little late, but we got there. And one of the senior developers that has been developing probably since the 90s or something made a comment, a brash comment in front of me. about QA and specifically manual QA. And they said, well, why are we waiting for manual QA if they're non-technical part of the team, right? And I really kind of thought about that, and I asked them, what do you mean by that? Non-technical part of the team. Well, you guys just run tests and make sure it passes, uh, and they had an understanding that that's all we did, right? Was run through a series of tests that someone else built, that someone else designed, and we just kind of didn't really know much about the system itself. Later, I pulled them on a one-on-one, and I said, I want you to know that QA is probably one of the most technical parts of your team because they know the system more than sometimes you guys do, right? Because we deal with the front end, we deal with the back end, we deal with API calls, and we were learning all of this stuff. And a lot of the times, manual QA is in charge of multiple teams and multiple systems, right? So they know how it connects to the whole system and as a whole. Um, and so during that meeting, I talked to them. I said, I think from now on, I want you to start using subject matter expert because that's what we really are as QA. We are taking all this information in and we're doing it with a passion for the end user, right? We want that experience to be good, and they apologized and we moved on from there, right? But it is something that I want to say about manual testers is they're literally your best friend when it comes to building an app, building an automation framework. When I came into MX, for example, I I had to build a team in the first 6 months, and I didn't know the systems. So I rely, and I still rely, on their expertise to help me build those automations, right? Um, the second bullet point here, the side-by-side approach, I actually got that from when I was teaching people how to sell, right? When you're teaching someone how to sell, you want to tell them that, imagine yourself in front of a customer and you're looking at a car, right? Let's sell cars for right now, just for a moment. And if you stand in front of the person and the car, they inadvertently will look at you as, well, they're standing in the way of what I want, the car, right? So a lot of salespeople actually stand beside you when they're selling you something. I mean, pay attention next time. And it's because they want to see, they want you to see, they want you to see them as an advocate, not someone who's standing in their way, right? And this is really helpful, not only when building a team, but when dealing with maybe an adverse member of the team, right? Where they have a lot of opinions or a lot of negativity, right? Let's stand beside them and see the problem together. Help me understand what you see. Why do you say that, right? Another approach that I forgot to put in here would be the five whys to a root cause, right? If you want to get to a root cause of a problem, it usually takes an average about 5 whys, right? Well, why do you think that? And it doesn't have to be a why question, right? Well, how do you know that? Can you show me? And eventually, with enough questions, you will see the root of that person's problem, right? Or in this case, when building a team, if you're standing side by side, you both are looking at this problem, building a team or building an automation, building a framework, building a test, side by side together, right? And then that founder's mindset as part of the strategy, right? Anyone you bring into the team kind of has to have that buy-in that we're building a team together, side by side. I need your help to build this team. I can't do it alone, right? And that's where that founder's mindset will take place. I brought you in because I love the way you think. I love the way you do things. Don't be shy about voicing your opinion. And then part of that career pathing. So what I mean by that is when you bring in someone, and especially manual testers, I believe, they are seeking to help out so much. They sometimes work too much, like Jamie. But when you bring them, make sure you understand that one, you understand where their career path is wanting to go, and two, make sure you voice that. Hey, I need your help building this team, and this is a great way to help you on your career path because this, right? Once they understand the why, once they understand the how it's going to help in their career path, they will be one of the most passionate members of that team, whether they're on the team officially or not. At MX, I haven't yet hired any junior software developers in test. But even with that, they still want more. They still want, okay, I'm ready for another assignment. Okay, I'm ready for another assignment, right? And that's so invaluable. That's so invaluable because then you can kind of see, okay, who's really in it? Who's going to help me? Because the matter of fact is when you're building a team, there is probably a deadline. Hey, can you build a team by, 2 quarters or 3 quarter, whatever the case may be in your company. And then advocacy, right? Like I said there, who are we building these tools and apps for? I'm not, I'm kind of infamous on my team by saying, you're not writing code for yourself. Sure, you know what that does, but does the project manager know what that does? If I have someone from customer care come and look at your automation, will they know what you're trying to do? Right? And it does need to be like that because we're not just doing a job for money, even though that's one of the main purposes, but we're doing it for that end user. We're doing it for that experience to be valuable and for our developers to release code faster, right? All right. So let's talk about some of those pitfalls and risks. I think I think you guys have heard this expression, location, 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 right? When building a structure or a brick and mortar business. But for building a team, it's buy-in, buy-in, buy-in. If you do not have buy-in from each individual member of the team, it will drag on longer. It will have a lot more pitfalls because not everyone has that buy-in, right? So it's crucial for you to not only sell that buy-in from the get-go, but understand who is helping with that buy-in and who is not, right? Because maybe, okay, he's not fully bought in yet because it hasn't clicked yet on how to build a framework or how to build a test. I'll work with that, but maybe I don't need him or her on my team right now, right? The shared vision, right? Each of you need to know what the shared vision is for this project, for this team, right? In MX, for us, our shared vision is to have automation for each team, at least to start, at least, towards the end of this year, we need to have automation on each team, right? And that's where we're going for. Next year, we'll create a new shared vision, right? And again, it's that cycle. You iterate, and sometimes you have to change that vision or change that buy-in, et cetera. Part of that shared vision is proof, right? When I have built a team, I make sure that I always give a demo. I give a demo to the directors, to the executive, whoever wants to hear it. In fact, at MX, the second day I worked there, they asked me to do a demo for Python to just the automation team. And I said, okay, great. It's only 4 people right now. Let's do it. And then that list kept growing and growing and growing. And towards the end of the close to the presentation, the demo, I was actually showing that demo to the entire company on my second day, right? But those demos build that buy-in. Those demos build the shared vision. And that's why they're crucial. If you have something else new to show, build a demo, right? With the manual testers that I'm teaching, whenever they build a test that's, something new that someone hasn't seen maybe in other teams, I tell them, let's have a demo that in our next meeting. And even if it's just one function that they want to demo, one piece of logic that they want, look, I can iterate through, this list, and, I can parameterize, things like that. That builds that shared vision, that builds that buy-in. So those demos are crucial. Communication. That communication is going to be key to building that team, right? Because of that feedback, because of those check-ins, and so that a new list of what to do. And then collaboration. Anytime I reach out to a DevOps, anytime I reach out to a developer for any sort of help, I actually ask them, do you want to be part of this demo? Right? Most of the time I get a no, but I'm asking them to build that collaboration, and that does two things. It builds trust in the automation team, that we know what we're doing. We have a direction. We know where we have an end goal, right? And the number two thing it does is it advertises for you. Oh, there's automation now? We're building an automation team? Great. So-and-so wants to do something in automation. Go ahead and talk to them. So it actually starts to snowball the projects for the automation team. And because we snowball those projects for the automation team, it creates a business need for more automation team, right? So again, it's always kind of that buy-in and that shared vision that you're building, not only for your team, not only for your individuals, but for the business as a whole. One of the things that I'll probably get a question on is, well, what about metrics? What about goals, right? And I truly believe that that's a conversation for maybe the third or fourth iteration of automation, building an automation team, right? Because we need to have something first. Let's build something together first. And as we get that buy-in, as we get that shared vision, as we do those feedbacks, we will get the goals naturally from each member of the business, right? So your director will tell you, okay, well, how does that improve time to release? Okay, I'll add that, right? And those goals, those metrics build themselves the more you communicate. It is so much better to over-communicate what you're trying to do than under-communicate and kind of guess what you're trying to build, right? And understand that there will be hiccups. For example, when I started at MX, I was not the first. There was 3 other automation engineers there, and I was the 4th one. Well, they actually wanted to be mobile engineers, and so they said, oh, David has it, and they went back to mobile engineering. And then all of a sudden, it was me and one other person that they hired, right? There will be hiccups. Expect those. If you guys have not heard about the 80-20 rule, this is something that you can use when building your times for whatever you're working on, right? A bug or a feature, I need to test this epic, I need a test plan made. Always plan about 20% of that for hiccups, right? Because there will come, there will come interruptions. There will be someone else that needs something else from you, things like that. So expect that and plan it into your time, your time management. All right. Oh, time for puppies. So I added this slide because I wanted to emphasize that this is not just work, 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 right? You need to have that balance. For me, I like to play with my puppies. So I have 3 puppies. I have the 2 twins right there, the miniature schnauzers. They're Jack and Rose. And then we just got this corgi, Theo. And so literally, when I'm building this team, all right, we've done this, I've delegated enough, I've done this. Come on, puppies, let's go play in the backyard, right? Make sure that you leave yourself time in that 80-20 split for some downtime, for some mental health, right? Because that is important. Yes, there's a deadline probably to build a team. Yes, there's goals to do, but you can't do any of that if you burn the candle at both ends. Right? That's why I included that. Plus puppies. Who doesn't like puppies? um, so that's pretty much it for now. I do want to leave some question and answer, but I did want to leave my contact information, both LinkedIn and Twitter. You can find me in those, David Herrera 83 and that David 83. I usually post tech related and automation related posts in there, and I'd love to help anyone. So if you need a mentor, come on, let's do it.